I want to begin by thanking all of you for joining us today to honor Sergeant Greg Moore this morning. On September 2nd, this community entrusted the men and women of the Coeur d'Alene Police Department by naming me the Chief of Police. My preparation to become Chief of Police in Coeur d'Alene was tireless. I studied, I interviewed, and I prepared as best I could. But there's one thing that you cannot prepare for, and that the years of service cannot prepare you for, and that's the loss of one of your officers. And so today we mourn the loss of our brother. On Wednesday of this week, merely one day after Greg passed, I sat down with Lindy and learned many things that I did not know about Greg. I learned who he was as a father. I learned who he was as a husband and who he was as a friend. Lindy wanted me to share a few things. And what she told me was that he never let her down. I heard that he was a fantastic communicator and a leader, that all he did. I heard stories of his huge heart and his infectious smile. I heard of his love for Manchester United and Latin music. I don't know what that's all about. I heard that even though he worked the graveyard shift for some time, he was always there for Dylan and Gemma. I heard about a special trip to Panama with his father. I learned that Gemma's first words were "Dada," and her face would always light up when she saw him. Like Greg, I'm a cop's kid. I grew up around law enforcement, and now I've been in law enforcement for over 2 decades. And there's one truth that never fades in our business, and that's that we are at our very best when times are at their very worst. The men and women of the Coeur d'Alene Police Department will continue to be our very best. And what I've seen from Lindy, from our officers, from our government and our community, we have rallied to be our very best. Character was demonstrated this week at the highest level. And not just the character and courage of the men and women who wear a badge, but also demonstrated by his wife, Lindy, his former wife, Jen, and all their family. Because while they suffered an unconscionable loss, their selflessness shined, and their paramount concern was for Dylan and Gemma. Whenever I look at Lindy, and when I think about Dylan and Gemma, the stark reality of the loss hits me. I was able to go home to my family on Tuesday night, hug my children, kiss my wife. And I realized that Dylan and Gemma and Lindy will not be able to do the same with Greg. As much as I realize that we have chosen a profession in which life can be fragile, we do not allow ourselves the luxury to ponder such thoughts for long, because to do so would render us useless in our trade. That's what I want to talk to you about today, our trade. There is no other profession in the whole of the United States that requires you to wear body armor to stop bullets, to carry lethality within a hand's grasp, and to carry handcuffs to control those who've shown that they cannot abide by the law set forth of our country and our community. It is often a thankless job in which recognition focuses on minuscule percentages of time when things go horribly wrong, and yet rarely focuses on the thousands of things that we do right. And Greg did things right. I want you to understand that Greg was a sergeant in the Coeur d'Alene Police Department. He was a leader, he was a supervisor, and he was not satisfied sitting at a desk. And in the end, and the reason we are here today, is that he personified the oath that we take when we raise our right hand and are sworn in. Greg was killed protecting the life and property and the way of life of the citizens of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And it will never be forgotten. Greg began his law enforcement career with the Stoughton County Sheriff's Department in 1997. He was hired with Coeur d'Alene Police Department in 1999. He was a school resource officer at this very campus in 2002. He was the Kootenai County Substance Abuse Council's top cop for 2007. He was a field training officer. He was promoted to sergeant in 2012. And earlier this year, I had the honor to recognize Greg for bravery with the Police Star. I spent some time this week talking to our officers, asking for Greg stories to better honor the man that we know. And as only cops can, they didn't tell me stories of stoic calm in the face of adversity, or bravery or saving a person's life. Cops tell stories of embarrassment that would humble you to the core. I heard stories of fights with drug-induced naked men. A fight between two grown men is one thing, but when one of the people is naked, it gets downright bizarre. It takes a special type of individual to ingest drugs to the point of psychosis, to the point where the body is almost near death, and then rip off all your clothing and fight anyone near you, and especially when those people are cops. It's also difficult for the cops. I mean, who wants to fight a naked guy? Also, in their excited delirium state, oftentimes these people, because of their medical condition, will die in police custody. So we have to be careful. And who wants to fight a naked guy? So apparently Greg was in one such encounter with a drugged up naked guy. And apparently it was a pretty good fight. At some point during the melee, this drug-crazed naked guy stands up on a railing and begins flapping his arms and crowing like a bird. The fight suddenly stopped, and Greg had a few Greg-like comments to the other officer that was there. And then the fight started again because the Birdman launched his naked butt from the perch right at Greg, and the fight ensued. One of the stories I heard this week was of his thoughtfulness and sometimes unwitting generosity. G-Money was playing softball one day, and after the game was over, he left his jersey on a bench. This gift was later picked up by a homeless man. And not just any homeless man. This homeless man had a certain quality about him. And apparently the homeless man was very photogenic, because that photo circulated around the police department for some time. Or maybe it's because that after taking the jersey and after wearing it for a while and after committing a few crimes, the man wore the jersey proudly in his booking photo. You know, where I'm from in Arizona, at the county jail, they issue shoes to inmates that are a combination of Vans skate shoes, the ugliest slippers your father would ever wear, and prison shower shoe flip-flops. Prior to my interview with the city to become your chief, and in typical Greg style, we met at a coffee shop, Greg and I. And in saunters G-Money with his standard pair of shorts, some ugly shirt, and the pair of the ugliest shoes I've ever seen in my entire life. I didn't know they sold those commercially, frankly. With his disarming, goofy smile, we talked for the better part of an hour. And I think the purpose of the meeting was to see if he could make me laugh. And I have no doubt that he was also trying to make sure that I was not just some goofball trying to become your chief. And I think that if he thought I wasn't up to the job, he was going to take one of those ugly shoes and beat me all the way back to Arizona. I've heard that he excelled at his profession, but it did not consume him. He knew how to find bad guys. During the shifts that he worked, whenever there was a fugitive on the loose or a criminal that had escaped, it was always a challenge for the other cops to find him quickly. Otherwise, 2-7 would roll in the area and catch him, and then the razzing would begin for those who didn't. I can tell you without equivocation that sales at Qdoba will take a hit. I was driving home from city council not too far in the distant past, and I made a traffic stop. And as soon as I cleared, I got a text from Greg that said he was going to Qdoba for dinner and asked if I wanted to join him. Imagine that. I think without Qdoba and coffee, Greg would have gone into withdrawal. Greg was part of a proud profession and a part of an even prouder police department. Over the past week, I've seen teamwork, camaraderie, support, and caring from our members. Our department has come together as a family to grieve, to support one another, and to remember a fantastic friend and an outstanding cop. And our community has followed suit. Greg clearly had a profound effect on the community. I've seen it by the outpouring of support and love everywhere I've gone this week. From our brothers in uniform, to our businesses, to our school kids, and even some of the criminals we arrest. On the day that Greg left the hospital, as is tradition, we had a group of officers from a variety of agencies lining the hallways of Kootenai Health to help him on his journey. But what I did not expect, and what was completely overwhelming to me, was over 100 doctors, nurses, orderlies, and administrative staff to line the hall with us. was driving home on the evening that Greg passed. And I was talking with a friend from Arizona about fallen officers that we've known. And as we spoke, I looked over and saw an enormous gathering of people along 95. And I knew immediately it was for Greg. And much like today, I found it suddenly hard to speak. My car just sort of steered its way over there, and I stopped and talked for a minute. And frankly, I was so overwhelmed by the love and support that I was witnessing from our community that I have no idea what I said to that group. I may have been speaking Spanish. But what I wanted to say to that group, and what I want to say to all of you today, is thank you. On behalf of the Coeur d'Alene Police Department, from the city, and from all my brothers and sisters in uniform, thank you for your outstanding support. K27, rest in peace, my friend.
Thank all of our speakers for sharing today. You've done such an amazing job. Greg was a man of deep faith, deep beliefs, and real convictions. He believed in everyone in this room. He believed in compassion and love. He believed in doing his service with excellence. He believed that his vocation was a calling. He saw the best in everyone. Him and I share those beliefs. He is highly relational, and in my opinion, very other-centered and self-giving. If pictures are worth 1,000 words, then you're about to hear volumes about the life of Greg Moore. At this time, we're going to watch a video that's been prepared.